My name is Camille, and until I was 37 years old, I thought family was the one thing you could always come back to. I grew up in a brick ranch house in Decatur, Georgia, the kind of house where Sunday dinners were loud and the porch light was always on. My parents weren't wealthy people, but they worked hard, they paid off that house, and they raised me and my brother Derrick to believe that what was theirs would one day be ours. That house was our inheritance. That house was everything. When my mom passed in January and my dad followed her in August, same year, 8 months apart, I fell apart. I was living in Charlotte then, working as a school administrator, and the grief made it hard to function. Derrick lived 20 minutes from the house in Decatur. He was the logical one to handle things on the ground. He told me not to worry, that he'd manage the estate, coordinate with the attorney, get things sorted. He was my big brother. He had always been steady. I trusted him completely, maybe more than I trusted anyone. About 4 months after my dad passed, I started trying to check on the estate myself, just to understand where things stood. I emailed the attorney Derrick had hired. He was slow to respond. When he finally did, his answers were vague. I asked Derrick directly when the house would be listed, and he kept saying, "It's complicated, there's paperwork, don't stress yourself." I remember sitting at my kitchen table one night thinking, why does something that's supposed to protect me feel like it's being hidden from me? I told myself I was being paranoid. I wasn't. I drove down to Decatur in March to visit the house, and it was gone. There was a new family living in it. A woman answered the door and told me they'd closed on the property 2 months earlier. I stood on that porch, the same porch I grew up on, and I couldn't breathe. I called Derrick and he didn't answer. I went straight to the county recorder's office. The deed transfer was there in black and white. The house sold for $312,000. My brother's name was the only one on the disbursement. Mine was nowhere. I hired my own probate attorney within the week. What she found made my stomach drop. Derrick had petitioned to be sole executor by claiming there was a handwritten amendment to the will, one that had never been witnessed or notarized, that supposedly gave him full authority over the property. The attorney he hired was someone Derrick had known personally for years. My signature appeared on one document that I had never seen before in my life. My attorney used the word fraud in our first meeting. That was the moment I understood that my brother hadn't just taken advantage of a situation. He had planned this. I gave myself 3 days to grieve what he did. 3 days. Then I got to work. I requested every document associated with the estate, the petition, the will, the deed transfer, all communications with the attorney. I pulled every text message and email Derrick had ever sent me about the estate and printed them all out. I hired a handwriting analyst to review the document with my supposed signature. I contacted the Georgia State Bar about the attorney who facilitated it, and I kept every piece of evidence in a labeled folder. If Derrick thought grief had made me soft, he was about to learn otherwise. We filed a civil suit against Derrick for fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, and unjust enrichment. He called me the week before the first hearing and told me I was destroying the family over money. I told him there was no family left to destroy. He'd made that choice when he forged my name. He hired a lawyer who tried to argue that I had verbally agreed to let him manage everything exclusively. My attorney laid out the handwriting analysis, the timeline of the sale, and the wire transfer records. Derrick sat across that courtroom and couldn't look at me once. The judge ruled in my favor. Derrick was ordered to pay me $156,000, my half of the sale, plus legal fees. The attorney who helped him was referred to the state bar for a disciplinary review. Derrick didn't have the cash liquid, so a lien was placed on his own property. He lost his relationship with his wife's family over it too. Apparently, she hadn't known the full story either. He's appealing, which means this isn't fully over. But the court said out loud what I needed the world to hear. What he did was wrong. That mattered more than I expected. I'll never get the house back. I'll never sit on that porch again, and some days that grief sits heavier than the money ever did. But I learned something about myself through all of this. I am not someone who disappears quietly when I've been wronged. My parents raised me in that house to know my own worth. Derrick stole from me during the worst year of my life and called it convenience. What I know now is that grief is not weakness, and love is not a blank check. You can mourn someone and still hold them accountable. I chose both.
Like, subscribe, and comment your verdict below for more betrayal stories.